Hi, this is Thembi Duncan, and I am here to talk about the personalized academic support system, otherwise known as PASS, that is embedded in the fictional Kaepernick Children's Enrichment Center for Youth in Foster Care, located in Buffalo, New York. I'm the evaluator, Thembi Duncan, and this is going to evaluate a period between 2021 and 2022. Now, there are 21 public high schools in Buffalo, New York, and youth experiencing foster care have a 49% high school graduation rate. This is as of 2021, and it is the lowest in the system with regards to any other demographics that were gathered by the state of New York. It is much, much lower than any other group of people and any other combination of demographics, and also extremely low compared to the national average, which ranges between 74 and 94% graduation rate across the country of the United States. So therefore, if there are not any interventions with young people in Buffalo in terms of graduating high school and being in somewhere in the foster care system, they have a coin's flip of a chance to graduate high school. And that's just really not acceptable. And so one of the goals of the Kaepernick Center is to provide care for foster youth that closes that achievement gap and hopefully gives them an opportunity to not only do better in their classes and get better grades, but think differently about the possibilities beyond high school. And in this way, they seek to fulfill an unmet community need. So the program to be evaluated is the PASS program, the Personalized Academic Support Program. And this particular project is about targeting the efficacy and the impact of that program and thinking about the wraparound services and how they affect young people in terms of their ability to graduate. So we're going to look at a primary goal of increasing graduation rates by 5% in the next year and finding out if there's been any effect in the past year on graduation rates, as well as secondarily looking at the furniture, the layout, all of the surroundings of the center that have been designed by the client, and seeing if there's an area there that can be enhanced or drawn back, or wondering if it at all even affects the youth's learning. So the evaluator overview, that's me, Thembi Duncan. This is me hanging out in New Orleans and doing some work down there. I am an arts administrator. I have a theater background, and I use the arts to explore issues of social justice. So as we start to talk about the evaluation method, I will be using the Tyler model of program evaluation, thinking about, okay, our learning objectives, we're looking to increase by 5% graduation rates. We're going to identify activities to meet those objectives, organizing the activities to achieve them, and then evaluating the participants' experiences. That'll be our evaluation method. Sharing with you the logic model that I created for this program, and you can see where the strategies begin, the early objectives as we move through the model, the intermediate, and the long-term goals. I'll be providing that in a separate form in the full report, but I wanted to just give a preview of that as well. So the purpose. Why are we doing this? Well, the Kaepernick Children's Enrichment Center for Youth in Foster Care opened in August 2021. It's got several buildings on the compound. There are 6 buildings on the compound, and it's all about providing wraparound services for youth in grades 9 to 12. Of course, the PASS program is one, but also it has a technology and design lab. It has a really interesting on-site clothing store along the lines of in H&M or Urban Outfitters, and you can use vouchers as students for clothes and accessories and things like that for young people who are typically in situations where they are not necessarily financially stable. They can earn vouchers with their good work habits and good grades so they can stay up to date on the latest fashion, which we know all teens love to do. So there are athletic facilities, there's an arts center, there's a family center, there's so many, many things. And only a few are mentioned here. But most importantly, there are licensed clinicians for on-site mental health support, which is so, so important for young people who are experiencing this situation, because often youth who are in foster care have experienced some sort of trauma, because a lot of times people who are not involved in the foster care system will assume that youth in a foster care situation are either in a foster home with a relative or at some sort of group home waiting for foster care. But young people can be in a situation as a runaway. They can be in supervised independent living if they've aged out. They can be in a trial home visit. They can be with a relative. There are a lot of ways that young people experience foster care. But what we do know is with that 49% graduation rate, that is that they are not receiving the consistency that sets them up for academic and career success. And we'd like to explore how the Kaepernick programs, specifically the past programs, impact is playing out on that. So we've got two questions here, a primary focus question and a secondary focus question. So the primary focus question focuses on the academic support of the past program and its impact on the graduation rates. The secondary focus question looks at the physical environment. The goal with the evaluation was to prioritize the academic support piece and to use the secondary nature of the environment as not so much of a backup, but just as something that wasn't, the stakes were not as high. So if we ran out of time, or if we ran out of resources, or if we didn't really get the research we needed, we weren't going to push too hard in the way that we would push for the academic support piece. So that's important to know about our research process. So the clients, the stakeholders, and the audiences are next. So the client is the executive director and their management team. They brought us in. They're the ones who want to get a deeper understanding of the program's impact. The stakeholders include participants, of course, the young people, the staff of the center, the young people's guardians, various community organizations that engage with them, classroom teachers, anyone who comes in contact with the young people. And the audience includes the students and foster families. And so the 5 groups that you see, the students, the classroom teachers, the educators, the Buffalo Public School administrators, and the client are all of the respondents that we engaged with. And we wanted to make it very clear that participation in this research process was completely voluntary. So we put that in our forms and made sure that we did not give people the impression that if they worked for the center and didn't participate in this study, that somehow they would be penalized or left out of something. So we feel comfortable with the way we communicated about that. Here's a breakdown of data collection instruments for a clearer understanding. This is also reflected in the full report, but I wanted to share this here just to show that we did a pretty deep dive with interviews. Everyone received an interview except BPS, Buffalo Public School officials and administrators, because we really essentially wanted to get data from them more so than anything. But everyone else involved received an interview, and we had questionnaires for the students and educators, as well as observation of the students and educators. We got documentation from the educators and the client, and also we got existing data from the teachers and the administrators. So we wanted to really have a number of access points to information that could lead us to the answers that we were looking for to our primary and secondary questions. Now, the evaluation design is our next aspect we're going to look at here. So we had some contextual factors. We wanted to obviously assume that the facilities are safe and fully staffed and available for students to visit after school days with certified individuals, background checked individuals, of course, who are there to support these young people in a safe way. Transportation as needed, because often youth in foster care situations may not have access to transportation. And then we wanted to look at how, are there students experiencing some sort of out-of-home foster care, and are all the stakeholders aware? Do the guardians consent to the students' participation in the program? And do the adults, the educators and the other adults, the classroom teachers, do they consent to participating in the program? And so our assumptions include that the high school students in foster care who attend the public schools in Buffalo would see improvement in their academic performance and higher graduation rates if they're receiving that consistent support from the center. We're focusing just on the academic support, but it's important to look at the bigger picture as well, because there could be some unexpected results. So the project management plan, when collecting data from August 2021 to June 2022, we're going to analyze it during July and August, and evaluator observation period is January 22 to June 2022. That's when the evaluator was on site. We're running a little bit behind our plan. We really thought we would have it done by the end of August, but we didn't really start at the beginning of July like we expected. So we're probably going to run that a little bit longer in terms of the analysis time frame that we needed to cover all of that ground with everything that we collected, and the client is comfortable with that. So our data collection methods will include existing data, interviews, observation program documentation, and survey instruments. And we have a detailed list in the report of who has which and under what circumstances. We've got our primary questions, but then we've got sub questions to those primary questions and then actual questions. So some of the questions, for instance, when we look at, okay, how does the academic support of the past program impact participants' graduation rates? Well, we look at sub questions like, are the educators qualified to teach the students? Well, how do we figure out if they're qualified to teach the students? We dig a little deeper and we ask about accreditation. We ask about, are they trained in cultural competency, anti-racism, diversity, inclusion, restorative justice? Did I say accreditation? Did I say that right? We ask how well they grasp the variety of content that the students are responsible for learning in order to graduate, right? We ask about their own program documentation of the student surveys. What did the students say about the educators? So that's one example of how we can really drill down into that question and learn more about, okay, do we feel like the educators are qualified to support these young people outside of their schools? And then what's the attendance level? How frequently do they show up? So we can look at existing data in terms of sign-in sheets, sign-out sheets, things that are not confidential, but accessible employment documents that allow us to know, well, how frequently are they there? And then we talk about, are the educators are an ideal fit? What other impacts are influencing the school environment for young people, or in influencing their own learning? And just digging into different areas, what kinds of academic resources are they receiving? How has their academic performance changed, if it has, and what that means to them, their classroom teachers, as well as the educators and the client. So we're really interested in asking a number of different people who surround these young people how their experiences play out both in school, in the center, and beyond, so that we can see if this is a workable and feasible intervention. So then we talk about the findings. So as I said, the findings in theory would be ready by the end of August, but we're going to need a little bit more time for those findings. But the way we would share them is to do some storytelling, maybe include a couple of case studies with young people, scrubbing the personal information, but just giving a sense of how a young person's experience plays out and what interventions are helpful and may not be helpful in terms of preparing them for graduating from high school. Thinking about how we can do what I'm doing now, is synchronous PowerPoint slide deck presentation. This is actually asynchronous at this point, but we're pretending that it's synchronous. Infographics that I've included in the report and can include separately, and the formal evaluation report that's attached to my submission. Making recommendations and course correcting is important. Course correcting is something that can be done both during the evaluation as well as later, just in terms of making little tweaks, talking about things as I go before a formal report is submitted, or even after a formal report when there's some check-ins later on, because ultimately the goal is for the program to grow. So it's not so much a gotcha moment or trying to prove that we earned the consultant fees, but to really help the client get what they're after and make sure that the feedback is mission aligned. What is the client's mission? What's most important to the client to accomplish? And how are we helping them do so with this information? Because the recommendations need to be both feasible and affordable, but they need to make sense based on what the client wants. And the client should be able to have plenty of time to ask questions and dig a little bit deeper so that this process is most meaningful for them. So the evaluation of this program is going to entail the aggregation of the data collection from all of those stakeholders listed here and look toward a greater understanding of how the program affects young people's likelihood of graduating from high school. Thank you. I look forward to answering your questions.